Good evening. I'm Jerry Westby, and on behalf of the Conejo Open Space Foundation, I want to welcome you to tonight's talk. It's our third virtual presentation in our 2021 speaker series. I want to thank you for gathering around your computers, your tablets, and your cell phones for this very intimate event. And we have a very large audience tonight, and that's really gratifying. We're privileged to welcome four distinguished local naturalists for what should prove to be a very interesting and timely talk, focusing, of course, on native plants, identifying them, using them in gardens, safeguarding them in our open space, etc. But first, some of you may not be familiar with the foundation, or COSCA, as we're known. We are an all-volunteer 501c3 nonprofit organization with a dual focus on educating the public on using and sustaining and understanding the value of the open space, and raising funds to support related programs and initiatives. Besides the speaker series, the donations have supported purchasing bike bells that are provided for free at major trailheads, and also our new scholarship program, where we've just provided $1,000 to two graduating high school students. Last week, CASA donated over $8,700 to the National Wildlife Federation for the Wildlife Corridor Bridge that will span the 101 freeway at Liberty Canyon. Now, that's something where we've already provided $7,500, so it just shows you the support that we are able to give to them based on your donations. The nice thing about our latest gift is that it will be matched fully by the Annenberg Foundation. They're getting very close to starting on building the bridge, and hope to have their first shovel turning in January. I want to thank those of you who made a donation for tonight's talk, and remind you that each $10 donation per person will make you eligible for a free plant or plants at Growing Works, which we'll talk about further a little bit later, or a discount for an activity with Wild Roots. Now, more on this later, but let me say that we will accept new donations through Saturday night, and then on Sunday, we'll be sending out an email to those of you who have donated, giving you the information on where to pick up the plants and eligibility and so on and so forth. So thank you again. So tonight, we're very fortunate to have four panelists to provide a lot of good information. And we've had a lot of laughs on it. Incidentally, as we've been sitting around waiting for this to start. We've got a little different format for tonight's speaker series. We have videos, PowerPoint presentations, comments from each of the panelists, and that will be followed by a question and answer session. So let me introduce the panelists. First, Laura Pasetta. There we go. I knew I'd mess up one of you. Laura is the owner of Wild Roots, the Outdoor Adventures, and a trained clinical herbalist, California naturalist, and nature photographer. Laura will be leading off the evening with a short video of her garden and offer some comments about its plants and their uses. Next, Jenn Rodriguez. Jenn is the manager of Camarillo's nursery Growing Works, which focuses on California native plants, and she'll also have a video from her very unique nursery that I think you'll find very interesting. That'll be followed by a short PowerPoint slide set on native plants. My daughter just texted me, "Go LA." Don't remind me, I can't watch.
I was just gonna look at my phone.
Yeah.
Excuse me, the PowerPoint slides that Jenn is going to show will also focus on native plants that attract wildlife into your gardens. Then Antonio Sanchez. Antonio is a very well-known, highly respected nursery manager, restoration volunteer coordinator for the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area, who will discuss and offer some tips on gardening with native plants, and also the native plants growing in our open space. Finally, in this breathless tour of panelists, finally, and last but not least, Brian Stark, the COSCA administrator, and a land conservation and habitat restoration professional through his career. Brian's going to offer discuss some of the problems seen in harvesting native plants in our open space and steps to address their removal and destruction. Now, Brian also converted his lawn to a native plants landscape, so I'm sure he's going to have some comments along those lines as well. So welcome all of you. And I also want to introduce Marcella Kettlehut. Marcella with the beautiful background there of her own garden. Marcella is a member of the COSCA Board of Directors, and in her spare time, she's also a lawyer, a real estate broker, a vintner, a mother, and has been adding native plants to her landscape for the last year or two. Now, she'll be the moderator for the Q&A session that we'll have later, and we'll be adding comments on occasion, I'm sure. And special thanks to Marcella, because she's the one who gathered this group together and took a real lead in organizing it. So a few words about the format tonight. All attendees will be muted. The presentation will probably be about an hour with the Q&A session afterwards for 30 to 45 minutes. We'd welcome questions submitted at any time during the presentation using the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen. Now, it would be immensely helpful if you could address your question to a specific panelist so that we could get the responses off to a kind of a quick and efficient start, although I'm sure others will be jumping in as well. We'll be recording this event, so if anyone has to cut out early, you'll be able to see it on the COSCA website probably early next week. Well, I don't think you guys all signed up to watch me talk. I wouldn't have. So let's get on with the show. So please welcome Laura Pasetta. So Laura, why don't you take it away?
Hi, I'm going to start with a little video about my garden. It kind of tells a story along the way, and then I'll stop and talk a little bit more after that.
Hi, I'm Laura Pasetta from Wild Roots, and welcome to my garden. Many years ago, when I first decided to landscape this backyard, I really wanted to plant native plants. And I had a conversation with someone that said, oh gosh, don't waste your time. They are very difficult to grow. They're finicky. They look dead half the time, and it's just not worth your time. Well, I will tell you this, it is the furthest from the truth. They are fantastic. They're beautiful. They're drought tolerant. They help our pollinators. They save us money. And there's just so many other wonderful possibilities with these native plants. Now, what we're looking at here is my pool area. And many years ago, when we first designed this backyard, we really wanted to have something that was functional, so we put in lawn. And when we put the lawn in, it was mainly because we had kids and dogs, and with them running in and out of the pool, we thought it was the best idea. Years later, the kids grew up and they stopped using the pool nearly as much. The dogs started using the lawn as a little potty area. Weeds grew in, of course, and what it ended up being was a brown, weed-infested mess, dead lawn that we were spending a ton of money trying to water and keep alive. So over the years, we had a lot of fun around this pool, dogs going in and out, kids playing, and it was time to redesign. So my husband and I decided we'd love to live here another 25 years. What could we put into the backyard that was going to be able to fit all the needs that we needed and check all of our boxes? First, we really wanted a drought-tolerant garden that was going to save money on our water bill. Second of all, we wanted something that was low maintenance. Let's face it, we're getting a little bit older and we just wanted something that wasn't going to take a lot of work to maintain. And as an herbalist, I was looking for plants that I could use medicinally in my dispensary as well as in my kitchen for cooking. And as a California naturalist, I really wanted to create a habitat garden for some of our pollinators and native birds and butterflies. And the reason for that was I wanted to not only help them, but I wanted to be able to enjoy them in my backyard. And finally, we wanted to create seasonal interest because 90% of our windows are facing out into our backyard, and we wanted color and interest and texture and variety. We also wanted a year-round supply of nectar for our hummingbirds and butterflies and pollinators that are here with us year round. So as you can imagine, we had quite the checklist to go through. So I went out and I looked for different plants, drought-tolerant plants and native plants that fit that bill of description and checked all the boxes off for us. Well, there was a few plants that really were fantastic that I'd love to share with you that check all those boxes off for us in our garden, and that is the salvias. When it comes to selecting a perfect garden plant, there's nothing better than purple sage, one of my favorite plants in the garden right now. It is aromatic, it has beautiful flowers, gorgeous architecture. It will give me almost year-round color and interest, which is wonderful. And it provides nectar for butterflies and bees and all kinds of different wasps. And even the hummingbirds once in a while will eat from it. As an herbalist, I use the leaves either dried or fresh in a hot tea with a little bit of honey to soothe a sore throat. My second salvia choice is white sage. It can be a bit of a challenge to grow and get started, but once you get it going and established, it makes the most beautiful landscape plant. I love the white leaves on it. The flowers are gorgeous. They come in big, tall spikes, and all kinds of different pollinators love them, especially the bumblebees. As an herbalist, I love to use the dried leaves, which I collect at the end of the year when I trim this plant. I dry them and I make a really strong tea, and I take that tea and pour it into a hot bath with some Epsom salt, or I'll put it in a tub of water to soak my feet, and this is really good for soothing really achy joints or muscles, and it's just very relaxing and aromatic. A third sage that grows here in California that I like in my backyard is black sage, and I use black sage primarily for culinary uses. Either I use it in soups, stews, pastas, on fresh fish. However, this leaf is really, really strong, so you want to make sure that you use a little bit, because a little bit goes a long way. Another one of my sages is the California coastal sagebrush. Now, it's not really a salvia or a sage. It's actually in the Artemisia family, along with mugwort and wormwood. Now, I've selected a ground cover versus the tall sages that we see in the mountainsides. And I did that because it's low maintenance, it's easy to care for, and it's got a great color, but I can still use the leaves, stems, and flowers as an herbalist in a liniment form, which I use on my back or sore muscles, and I've even used it on my horse and dogs with really great results. And this is just 4 plants that I've shared with you. I have so many more plants in my garden that I do all these wonderful things with. And one of the benefits that we found out was by putting in these drought-tolerant native plants, we save 20% on our water bill. Who doesn't want to save a little bit of money and water at the same time? Also, we really accumulated so much color, interest, versatility, and style with this particular new design. Even when I'm sitting at my sink and I'm doing the dishes and I look out in the backyard, I can enjoy the hummingbirds and the butterflies, and even the western monarch came in, laid eggs, and offered us the opportunity for us to see the whole birth of all kinds of caterpillars this last few years. And I've also noticed that by planting native plants have also added an additional element. My vegetable garden has improved because all the beneficial insects have gotten excited about coming to my garden. And one of my favorite benefits is I can come into my garden and pick these beautiful, wonderful aromatic plants for both food and medicine. I hope that I've inspired you, because these plants are wonderful. They help our pollinators. They can help our bodies medicinally or in their kitchen as well. They save money with water, and they're absolutely beautiful to look at. Thank you for joining me in my garden today. Yeah. Is that what I did? Okay, stop share. Okay. Okay, great. So I wanted to say we had 2 versions of this, and the last ending was supposed to thank the Open Space Foundation for allowing me to talk, which is really wonderful. Thank you very much for allowing me to do this. So as you can see, that was my garden before and after, but it's in process. I'm still building on it. I'm still doing the work in the backyard. A couple of things that I didn't mention in the video is, first of all,
one of the benefits is when I trim all of my plants at the end of the year, like around November and December, I make the most beautiful arrangements. My St. Catherine's lace buckwheat produces these beautiful flowers, and I picked these when they were white, and they stay white the entire time that they're dried. And I can make the most gorgeous Christmas wreaths with these. So I do a lot of crafts with my native plants. I also made a handful of door decorations. This one actually has some purple sage, some grama grass. It even has the white sage seed heads. So there is just endless possibilities with crafts. And every single Christmas, I will make a Christmas wreath. I always have to cut back my coyote bush because I want to kind of keep it in alignment. This makes the most gorgeous Christmas wreath, along with the St. Catherine buckwheat, because I kind of cut that back so it doesn't get woody. And of course, the native grapes make the most beautiful wreaths. When I have to cut those back too, I actually cut them back and weave them into a gorgeous kind of pattern, just like you would buy this at the store, right? I don't have to buy it, I make all my own. And who doesn't love some of the architecture that these gorgeous plants create? When people say, oh, these look so dead, you know what? There's something really beautiful about this. So I use it in all stages in my garden. So I wanted to share that benefit that I do in my garden. My main goal when I teach is to really get people excited about planting natives, because there's just so many possibilities with it. You saw all the benefits in the video. And what I really try to do is discourage people from going out and trying to harvest these things in the wild. I'm a big advocate of not doing that, because I just feel that nature needs a break. I mean, humans are just taking so much, and she really needs a break. So please don't pick these things in the wild if you're going to try them. In fact, you can actually order them online. I just ordered, I know this is a giant bag of sage. Okay, I use a lot of sage, and my garden just can't produce enough just yet until I pull out my front yard lawn. So I order sages online at Mountain Rose Herbs. Is a fabulous place. They're sustainable. They take care of the environment. And elderberries, those kind of things, those can all be purchased online. So there's no reason to go out and take it from the birds that need it. Buy the stuff online, or take one of my classes and I'll show you how to use it and get familiar with it. And so that's really my goal. I really feel that that's important. Another thing that I didn't cover, and I think it's really important, the native milkweed that we have, which I have in my garden, the narrow leaf milkweed. Be a little cautious with that. I love it. Plant it, please plant it, because our butterflies need it. But when you go to cut it back during the end of the season, be real careful with that milk sap that comes off of it. A lot of people don't know that can actually create a little burn on your skin. I had a recent issue that happened. I wear glasses normally, and I had a little bit on my finger, and I kind of put my glasses up like this and touched the corner of my eye and got a big drop of sap right in the corner of my eye. I had to go to the doctor, and it was a big ordeal. So just be a little careful. Wash your hands after you trim that plant back. And definitely plant it. Please plant native milkweed and spread the word. We're trying to get people to understand that native is really important to our pollinators. There's some new varieties that are going to be coming out really soon. That'll be early varieties. Xerces really working on this. So, get online with Xerces, which is an invertebrate resource, and they will show you some really great seed resources too. But you've also got our native nurseries. Jen's got some stuff going on there. So please buy local as much as possible. And lastly, when I wanted to talk a little bit about the design of our garden. Now, this was a daunting task, I'm not going to lie. And I really thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to pick this list of plants? How is this possible? But what I did is I sat down with my husband and we talked about what his needs were. And then I got busy and thought, well, how do I collect a list? So I wanted to just give you a little inspiration. The first thing I did to select these plants was I decided in my mind, these beds, they were specific. They were specific size. They had clay soil, not great drainage, and it was on my already lawn water system, right? And I wanted something that all were in the same kind of family. They all wanted to live together. And so that was really important. Now, that didn't mean that it all had to be 100% natives, because my husband's need was, well, I'd like to look out and see some color too. So I blended in some other drought tolerant plants in with my natives that actually work well with them. And it also helps my pollinators, because we want to have some sort of food for them during different times of the year. So the way I accumulated my list was I got busy and I got a whole bunch of really cool books. And by the way, if all these book lists and then some are on my website under Growing Natives. And Calendar Native Plant for Garden was a great one. I got that from Theodore Payne. Again, I have hundreds of books. I'm a book nerd, okay? So drought tolerant, landscaping in California, how to feed the bees and the insects, and then wild edible plants and medicinal properties. So then once I got those all, put those all together, I went and visited different gardens. And I highly recommend, this is a great time of year to go visit gardens, because what's dormant now, there's not everything that's dormant. In fact, I was at Jenn's nursery and I go, what is that yellow flower right there? I want that one because it's beautiful right now. And that white one. So it's a great time to go visit these nurseries to see what's in bloom right now, or friends' gardens or whatever, and see, kind of fill in. So after that, I kind of looked at the colors and interests in gardens, and I put together my wish list. And then I kind of got creative and pulled out my kids' color crayons, kind of drew a little area of the garden. And I kind of played around and said, well, my coyote bush is going to get 4 foot tall but 4 foot wide, and it's going to hide the plants in the back. And so I had some fun with it, because those borders are 4-dimensional, so they have to always look good from all dimensions. So that was interesting, kind of planning that. And then a bit of advice is, when you decide to do this, I took someone's advice at Theodore Payne that said, please measure where your plant's going to go and how big it's actually going to become. And so I got a tape measure and I went, okay, it says at CalScape, which is another really great resource for plant material, which I use. It says it's going to get 4 foot high by 6 foot wide. And so I took my measuring tape and went, okay, there's 6 foot. So I got to make sure that wherever I plant a plant here and here, it's the edge. Well, it's 3 years in now, and it's filled in right to where I wanted it. It looks really beautiful. And so I'm really, really, really happy about that. So measuring is really important. Again, I'm going to pull a whole bunch of plants out that are really just not my thing. They're not natives. I'm going to replace them with some natives now that I've got a few cool plants that I'm going to fill in. So your garden is always going to change. Things are going to happen. In fact, right before this video, I thank goodness I had spent during COVID filming my garden, because my drip line came detached and it watered my white sage, my black sage, and my purple sage, and it totally killed it. They don't want water in the summertime. It was the worst thing that could have happened to them. So I'm completely replanting them, but then that could happen. That happens. This is life when you're a native gardener. Things happen. So just go with it, go with the flow, change it, don't be afraid. And most of all, do one border at a time and then have a little fun with that. So that way, if you want to experiment, you can. It's not going to really, break the bank, right? So in closing, I just want to say, I hope that I have really inspired you to think a little differently about this and get excited. I have a list of all the plants that I used in those borders listed on my website, so you're welcome to download that and get some ideas. So get out there and plant some native plants, please. Thank you so much.
Laura, that's great. That's really terrific. And I just want to remind people that there was a lot of information there,
Yeah.
both in the video and what you've just said. So the recording of this on our website might be really useful for people if they want to review that. And I'm imagining a number of our attendees tonight are interested in the drought-tolerant plants because, of course, of this terrible drought that we've been experiencing. So I hope that that's going to be useful to a lot of people this evening. So Laura, you are going to open up Jenn's video now, right? Share that. And Jenn, while she's doing that, do you want to make any comments as she's bringing your video to the screen?
First of all, I want to thank Laura because Laura did all of our videoing and production, and you wouldn't have this without her. But let's launch into the tour of the nursery, and then I can talk more after.
Terrific.
Hi, I'm Jenn Rodriguez, the manager of Growing Works, which is a program of Turning Point Foundation. Turning Point's a nonprofit based here in Ventura County, and we offer healing, haven, and hope for people struggling with mental illness. At Growing Works, we like to say that we're cultivating mental health. Our mission is to provide supported employment, horticultural therapy, and recovery for adults with moderate to severe behavioral health diagnoses. This includes schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and severe depression. Our program, which includes supported employees, so people who are actually employed by Growing Works, and also members, that's another word for volunteer, are all receiving services from Ventura County Behavioral Health. That means that they have chronic and serious behavioral health diagnoses, and they get services from VCBH. We practice a lot of coping skills here at Growing Works. Coping skills, as defined by the National Institutes of Health, National Cancer Institute, are methods a person uses to deal with stressful situations. These may help a person face a situation, take action, and be flexible and persistent in solving problems. As you can imagine, with a moderate or severe behavioral health diagnosis, navigating life is just harder. So coping skills help whether you're going to have a panic attack or there's voices talking to you in your head. And so by practicing coping skills on a daily basis, it just makes life a little bit easier. Coping skills that we use include just showing up to work, listening to music, which we do on a daily basis as we work, doing distracting activities, physical activities, observing nature, doing activities that are meaningful. Even just transplanting plants or watering plants is a meaningful activity if it's important to you. We ask for help, we learn new skills, and we get to hang out with our friends and colleagues while we work. A little background on Growing Works. The program started in 2018. Our first plants were sold in May of 2019. Over the years since 2018, we've developed a skilled and dedicated workforce. Those skills include order preparation, inventory, transplanting, pruning of plants, people just learning the different plants, janitorial, and some really cool artwork that you're going to see a little bit later in my presentation. Basically, if work needs to get done here at the nursery or in the sales and delivery process, we do it. Our supported employees, our members, and our staff pretty much do it all. We grow California natives, succulents, and Mediterranean plants. Most of those are very drought tolerant and water conservative. The exception is a few California native plants that grow in wet areas like stream beds or near the ocean, so obviously they require more water. We're basically a niche wholesale nursery, though we do have retail days once or twice a month. You can check our website for dates. A common assumption people erroneously make when they visit the nursery is that they assume that our quality is going to be poor because our staff is made up of people with mental health diagnosis. This cannot be further than the truth. Our quality standards are very high, both in our product and in our customer service. For example, our best customers include Theodore Payne Foundation, which is a California native plant powerhouse, the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden, and Ventura Botanic Garden here in Ventura County. We start plants one of three ways at the nursery. One is through plugs that we buy in from a plug nursery, another kind of nursery. They come in with roots and a little bit of soil. They spend a couple days acclimating here in their tray in the nursery, and then we plant them onto a bigger size. A second way we grow baby plants here at the nursery is through cuttings. You take a cutting of a plant, you stick it in a special soil media, and they magically just form roots on their own. Initially, they're with all their buddies in a little tray and baby greenhouse, and then once they get big enough, they'll get transplanted to a container of their own, and continue the growing process. The third way we start plants here at Growing Works is through seed. We sow seed into a seed tray like this and start a slow waiting process that can be weeks or months until we have germination and adequate growth to transplant. Then they go to a rose pot. This is a 2-inch by 2-inch container, and we wait again for them to grow until they're big enough for transplanting into a 4-inch container, as you see here. These are our shade houses. We grow over 400 species of plants, so there's a selection of them here. Once they get big enough, we transplant them into 1 gallons. This is one of our corrals, aka bunny exclusion zones. We have 1 gallon and 2 gallon plants here, and you can see a selection outside the corral as well. Those ones are the more bunny resistant. Thanks for joining us for this tour of Growing Works. We hope to see you on a Saturday retail sale soon.
Okay, bear with me for a moment. There we go. Okay, so I'm now going to talk about a few wildlife supporting and habitat plants and the basics of cultivating a wildlife garden. I'm featuring the artwork tonight of Matt Taylor, who is one of our employees at the nursery, including the background for my presentation. Matt is extremely talented, and so I have the privilege of getting to display some of his work in my talk. Full disclosure, I sell plants for a living. All the species I'm going to discuss, we sell at the nursery. I'm sorry if that seems greedy, but it's also my job. And then a few notes on Latin. Latin is the universal language of science, including plant names. This is so the same plant, whether it's discussed or sold in Japan, is identified as with a specific Latin name and variety instead of a common name, because milkweed might mean 6 different things or 6 different plants to 6 different people. So calling it Asclepias fascicularis versus Asclepias speciosa is a far more precise lingual way of describing a plant. So a habitat, as defined by Oxford Languages, is the natural home or environment of a plant, or animal, plant, or other organism. And in wildlife gardening, we're trying to approximately replicate that home. And these are all illustrations of what components of habitat gardening are our customers that we're trying to attract. So food is something we provide in habitat gardening, home and shelter. That's what the mushroom house represents.
Jen, could I interrupt? Your PowerPoint's not showing on the screen.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say that too, because I think she's going off her PowerPoint.
I know.
Yeah, I'm actually going on my PowerPoint, but I messed it up. Let's try it again. Can you see it now?
Nope, not yet. It
Still
worked
no.
during our practice session.
I know.
Just press share.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay, I think I didn't complete the deal. How about now?
Go. Yep, now there it is.
Okay, so we're gonna just so
You can jump down to
there we go. Yeah, we'll fly through this. Matt Taylor, yay! I sell plants for a living. We talked about Latin, habitat. Okay, here we go. Is that better? So habitats provide food, and they also provide home and shelter with the mushroom house. Various customers that we'll be referencing are squirrels. This one's evil because we have a persistent squirrel issue at the nursery, and all of my employees know that squirrels are not my friends, at least not at work. Birds, rats and mice, deer, caterpillars and insects, butterflies, and then also some of these plants serve humans and gnomes. We chose a gnome to represent humans basically because it's funny, and so we're covering all our bases. Let's see, this is a little note. This I am identifying as a wood rat home. Wood rats, also known as pack rats. And it's just a little note that sometimes debris makes shelter or makes habitat for animals. And as somebody who spent 25 years in the landscape industry, I see debris and think, oh, that needs to be composted, thrown away, gotten rid of. But if you have sufficient land, or you want to thusly distribute your land, you might consider letting debris accumulate. Now, we live in a wildfire active area, so please be wise on how you do this. Like, obviously, you don't want 20-foot brush piles near your home. That's, I'm going to say categorically, is a bad idea. Also, it's termite fodder. However, if you have an area on the back 40 where you can let the pack rats do their thing, they can be fascinating species to monitor. I have a fellow nurseryman who regularly loses dozens, if not hundreds, of plant tags to the pack rats because they like to collect shiny things. They're kind of like the mammalian crows in that respect. So it can be a lot of nature fun and also educational for the whole family. They probably are really great for dogs to chase, but that's just an element of home and shelter that's not an active plant, but something to think about. Okay. Valley oak, or Quercus lobata, is the first species we're going to discuss. On the left, you can see examples from the nursery, and on the right, you can see the super extra cute leaves and acorns. Super extra cute, of course, being a technical plant term. This is a deciduous oak. It's one of the biggest oaks and biggest non-coniferous species that is indigenous to California, meaning not a conifer, like not a pine tree. Valley oak, as the name implies, grow in valleys where there's generally deep, rich soils. So in the Conejo Valley, obviously, it's a valley. We have valley oaks. If you're trying to grow things on slopes, probably not the best candidate. But I like to think of valley oaks kind of like the Twin Towers were before 9/11. You had a daycare, you had all kinds of businesses. You could have a meal in like one of a number of restaurants and get almost everything that you could get in a city in a one-stop shop because they were so big. That's what valley oaks are like. You can get food for a number of different species. There can be, birds' nests and shelter for a number of different species. The deer can forage the acorns. Pretty much everybody forages the acorns, as far as I can tell, because it's so much great food. And they just have a lot to offer. They're also really big. So again, if you're like in a tiny little bungalow on a 16th of an acre, maybe not the best choice. And you can, unless you want to like bonsai one in a container, which is kind of a different conversation. But it's a species worth noting simply for the biological breadth that is associated. On the top right corner, if you can see it, my photos of us are blocking it. There's a wasp gall, which kind of looks like an apple in the tree. It's kind of a curiosity of oaks. Oaks get a lot of galls, and often those are like wasp apartment complexes. So if you see what looks like, I don't know, a racquetball or an apple in an oak tree, it's probably a wasp gall. I wouldn't hit it. I don't know if those wasps are mean. They tend to be small, but you don't have to cut the tree down. You don't have to call 911. That just is what it is. And as mammals, I think that we have a distinctly mammalian bias in the wildlife we want to cultivate. Raccoons are interesting, but wasps somehow seem like less appealing or less sexy. However, they do important functions in the ecosystem. So we might want to make a place for them too, or just be thoughtful about that. Okay, moving on is blue elderberry, which is so interesting to me. Like the one on the left, you can see it's kind of old. To me, it kind of looks like a shaggy dog of a shrub. They tend to be messy and a little bit scraggly, but they're also very rich. Like, I'm sure that Laura could speak to the medicinal purposes of elderberry. By the way, don't eat the fruit fresh. I believe that they're poisonous. You'd probably have to eat a lot to kill you, kind of like poinsettias and everything else, like many things that have a really bad rep. But even if you only get a stomach ache, probably not worth it. I think you have to cook it to make it work, to reap the medicinal properties. It has a really pretty flower. That's the creamy panicles of flower. And then the ones growing at our nursery are on the right-hand side. We have a bunch of 1 gallons of the blue elderberry or sambucus right now. Again, really rich offerings, a lot of like food. They're great habitat in terms of perches. And if I were a bird, it'd be easy for me to hide in an elderberry, which, you know, cover and perch is different than home. So if I'm a bird and I'm out doing my bird, you know, eating the berries on the elderberry, and a hawk or something comes, I need shelter that's not a home. And as the thicket that kind of an elderberry grows into, that is a great source of shelter. Oh, and the deer. I put the deer in to pop up in the bottom left-hand corner because apparently it's debatable whether deer like to forage elderberry. If you could tell definitively what plants a deer would like to eat and what plants a deer would not like to eat, you would be rich, or you could be very rich, because nobody knows. It's kind of a magic 8-ball scenario because deer are adaptable. So one year they might love elderberry, and then for the next 10 years of your life, they might be like, elderberry, schmelderberry, I'm just not interested. But the basic lesson there is that deer are adaptable. So your friend's elderberry might get regularly foraged by deer and yours never might. It's not predictable. And welcome to Deer and Wildlife Foraging 101. Okay, sugar bush and lemonade berry. I kind of did a cheat and did 2 in 1 because these are basically cousins that are so closely related genetically that they're known for hybridizing naturally. So, you know, when a sugar bush and a lemonade berry are in love, they get cross-pollinated and they produce little hybrid babies. The picture on the bottom left is the ones at our nursery. On the right is, I think, on the CSUCI campus. And lemonade, you can make a lemonade-like drink that's very tart, so you might want to add sugar, hence the name. That's from the berries they produce. One notable thing about them is they're a really unique color. They're kind of like a mauve-y pink that you don't see a lot of naturally. So that's just kind of a fun design thing to consider. Also, these are great for slopes. They're great for holding slopes together. They can become quite large to an unwieldy point. So we're talking about 30 feet if they're happy. However, something to consider is in form, they're a lot like a crepe myrtle. Little secret, all crepe myrtles want to be a really big shrub. We grow them as trees. We use them as street trees. They're really pretty. We treeify them, but they always, always just want to be a big shrub. Like they tend to sucker. They're trying to be a shrub again. So just as we can trim a crepe myrtle into a standard tree or a multi-trunk tree, you can do the same with lemonade berry. And I even say you could probably replace a crepe myrtle with a lemonade berry and have it function similarly. The big difference being that these guys are evergreens and crepes are deciduous, so they drop their leaves. Okay, so again, everybody pretty much loves the habitat provided by sugarbush and lemonade berry as a food source, as a perch, birds, insects, caterpillars, and then humans and gnomes. Right, Laura actually showed her milkweed providing excellent habitat for monarch butterflies in her presentation, and I'm going to echo that here. On the right hand, we have a patch of milkweed at the nursery that's a volunteer, and volunteer, there's a spectrum of volunteer and weed. Basically, both come up on their own. A volunteer is a plant that comes up on its own that you like, and a weed is a plant that comes up on its own that you don't like. It's completely subjective. So this milkweed is so vigorous that now we use it as mother stock. We harvest from, like, we take root cuttings from it, we take stem cuttings from it. It's just really, really tough. So it's become an asset to the nursery. And there it is growing in the gravel. making us look messy, but also it's benevolent. The one on the left, I actually took this at Wildwood a number of years ago. And if you look carefully, there's little milkweed bugs on it. So milkweeds are known as being like one of the preferred plants in our area for monarch butterflies. They also support a whole bunch of other life. So they're kind of like the fairy godmother to a bunch of insects. So there's the bugs up close next to my hookah smoking caterpillar right here on the screen. Oh, and something that I learned this week about them is that the fibers produced with the seed, they're like kind of stringy, fabricy. The seed pod, the seeds when they open out of the pod, those are actually a favored material for bird nests. So it's not only insects, birds profit from them as well. And then obviously great food source for monarch butterflies. And my final species is yarrow, or the Achillea species. And the one on the right, this is actually at the Government Center on Victoria in Ventura. This was a plant that we grew and sold to them. It's doing really well. They are replacing more and more water consumptive gardens with natives. They're at the Government Center, so we're really proud to be a vendor to our local government. But it's doing really well. You can see it's blooming a lot. There are many hybrids of the yarrows, so they have many more colors than are naturally occurring. The two that I'm aware that occur in Southern California are the white, which is shown here, and then there's one called Island Pink that occurs on the Channel Islands. And then these are all hybrids. There are purists in native plants, and there's a lot of us who like flowers and are kind of more broad in our allowable species. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I do like flowers myself, so I'm less discriminatory in plants. I would go as your convictions take you. And again, a food source for many different species. This planting on the bottom is, I live in Moore Park. This is here in Moore Park. It's in a parking lot island. And again, I worked in landscaping for a long time, or a parking lot peninsula, excuse me. And if you can grow in a parking lot, you can pretty much grow wherever. Somebody on the Q&A asked earlier about replacing lawns. And this is a great plant for a lawn replacement. It gives you flowers, which are pretty. If you really want to do kind of low commitment maintenance, you can mow it. If you raise the mowing deck on your mower pretty tall, you can mow it once a year or weed eat it once a year and just not have to do much work. It's pretty tough. It's approximately walkable if you have good mobility, and it's just a really great plant. And I think, Marcella, I think that you said too that there can be some allergy issues with this. So if you have sensitive skin, wear long sleeves or gloves when you work with Achillea. Okay, so I like Laura and a book whore, love to read, love research, love books. So that's the stack of books that I used, or at least harvested from the Thousand Oaks Library and my personal collection on the right. I also definitely want to refer you to the California Native Plant Society, cnps.org, as a resource and just a great organization to belong to. And then Calscapes, these are two websites. Calscapes provides a lot of good information about plants, including some cultivation. Calflora, which is a complementary site, will help you to find plants. Well, actually both will help you to find them, but find growing in their natural habitats. And finally, I'm doing the shameless promotion of Growing Works, www.growingworks.org. We are having a fall festival a week from Saturday, which is the 23rd, where we'll have food, a plant sale, teach you how to make your own succulent pumpkin, BYOP, bring your own pumpkin, and a lot of artisanal local vendors, and Jerry August, with whom I went to elementary school, with his guitar, and he'll be singing. And that's it for me, I think.
Great. Thank you, Jen. You want to unshare? There you go. Unshare your screen.
Yeah.
That's terrific. Very colorful and very informative about these different species. So
thank you.
And by the way, on the 23rd is when many people can go down and pick up their free plants from Growing Works. So, well, let's move on then to Antonio. Do you want to take it from here?
Yeah. Jerry, how long do I have? I think it's like 2 hours you said I could do?
No, I didn't say that. No, somebody else must have said that. No.
It's gonna feel like 2 hours. I thank you guys for inviting me. I'm gonna talk a little bit about plants that you might find in the Santa Monica Mountains in your Conejo open space. And yeah, I'm gonna touch on Jen. We're like on the same wavelength, Jen. She was talking about Calflora. I stole this with permission from Calflora. So if you guys look on the photo on the right or the drawing on the right, the map of California, and most of those blue spots are natural occurrences of this plant. So this plant, like Jen was saying, Latin Epilobium canum, we call it, just in the street, we call it California fuchsia. Don't walk into Home Depot looking for Epilobium canum, you might not get an answer. California fuchsia is what you're looking for. I mean, you could use either name, but on the left, this is probably our most, what a lot of people would say is most attractive and most common flowering perennial in the Santa Monica Mountains in our, Newbury Park, Thousand Oaks area on the left. And you can see it's super easy to grow. I've seen people growing it in full sun in Phoenix. There's a nursery in Arizona that grows it. So very adaptable. And what I want to highlight here, as we go over some of these plants that you guys will find locally, is not everything you guys see in your mountains and on your trails is easy to grow. Just because it grows there doesn't mean it's good for your garden. It's like a neighbor. I don't want to talk bad on some neighbors, but just because they live next to you doesn't mean they're going to lend you some sugar. So we want to find the neighbors they got extra sugar. So I'm going to try to show you guys how to figure that out. So Epilobium canum, California fuchsia, we see the natural distribution. It's beautiful. Fresno, Bakersfield, Sacramento, all the way up to the border down in the Baja. For me, when I see this on Calflora, this means to me that it's going to be a very, very adaptable plant in our garden. So we can use it in Riverside, we can use it in Malibu, we can use it in Thousand Oaks, not all the time, but to me, it's a very, very good signal that this plant will be easy to grow. Let me take you to a very close cousin of Epilobium canum. This guy is called, let me get my screen to work. I'm horrible at technology. There we go, look at that. So this is Epilobium septentrionale. I'm not even sure of the common name of this plant. You can see the natural distribution for this plant. So this plant is gorgeous in containers. It looks beautiful. It stays low. It spills over a container, it flowers during the summer, etc. But when we put it in our clay soil, a lot of us live on flat, slightly sloped areas, and we put a drip system on it. This guy wants to remember where he or she is from, and where he or she is from is nothing like Fresno or Newbury Park. It's 3,000 to 7,000 foot elevation. For most of the winter, it's either by snow, under snow. When it rains, it's granite or completely rock. The drainage is almost perfect. And I found plants like this are super hard, for the most part, to bring into our gardens and just put a drip system on, put right next to the lawn. So I want to take you guys through a tour of some of the stuff that you would find locally, and hopefully you won't harvest it. I know Brian's going to talk about a little bit about that. So another one, golden yarrow. I love this plant. This is a perfect pollinator plant for late spring, early summer. This is something you guys might see in the hills as you're walking out there, and you can see the natural distribution. So this is where we find it in what I call native nature. It's on the Channel Islands, out towards Fresno, San Jose, down in the Baja. Beautiful. Basically, wherever there's a person with the last name Sanchez, you will find this plant. This plant is everywhere. So, and it's very easy to grow in a pot and in the ground. So let's look at a very close relative of this guy. Has a few different common names. I'm going to call him seaside golden yarrow, even though I really know him as lizard tail. This is Eriophyllum stacatifolium. So I'm going to switch screens real quick. So let me show you. I'm going to go back. This is the one you'll find locally. Everywhere, flowering about maybe late March, but really going off in April, May, early June. And then this is the guy that we find really on the coast. I've seen him a few times in native nature. I love seeing this guy in native nature. I've never seen this guy in native nature when I have not either seen the ocean or heard the ocean. So this guy really wants to just be wearing sandals, have like one of those Baja sweatshirts on, and probably try to swim or surf like at 5 in the morning. This guy loves the ocean. And what is next to the ocean there's sand, there's really good drainage. If it rains, the water's gone. And so what I've seen with this, and I used to have a native plant nursery in Ventura, we used to have this plant in full sun, in clay soil. It was gorgeous for 1 or 2 years, grew full size, about 18 inches tall, pollinators like crazy, 3 inch or 3 feet wide, just a beautiful plant. You could deadhead it and it would flower right back. But we had it in clay soil. We watered it too much. And what happened? Like a lot of our native plants that aren't used to our heavy watered clay soils, it drowned after 2 years. And I've seen that this guy, in my experience, is much easier to grow in a container. It's a beautiful container plant, really hard to grow in flat clay soils, especially if they're going to get overwatered with drip or overspray for lawn, or overspray that you would see in lawn. And so again, I just want to emphasize, you guys could do this research on your own, or you could pay someone like Laura, me, or Jen a lot of money to do it for you, but it's free. And you could find some of this distribution data on your own. Against wherever the Sanchez family are at, if it's that wide a distribution, usually very easy to grow in your garden. What I've also found, and this is the bottom point, you guys could see my little cursor here. What I found is that when we have a plant that's this widely distributed, it's usually very easy to maintain. And so that could be irrigation wise, that could be pruning wise, and that could be sometimes full sun and part shade wise. And so a lot of this stuff, I know a lot of people have questions about how to maintain native plants. And what I found is when we have a plant that occurs in all these different areas, it's usually very, very easy to maintain. I'll give you guys a few tips on maintenance in a second. So I'm going to go over one of my favorites, which is coffee berry, or we call it Frangula californica. It used to be Rhamnus californica. I hate all these new names. They're ridiculous. I remember seeing this guy in one of the malls in Ontario. So that's Inland Empire. Easily gets over 100 degrees most days in July or August, or very common to get that hot, past 110 a lot of times. In a mall, parking strip, about 3 feet tall, 3.5 feet tall, being boxed, gorgeous with a drip system. You can find it in Newbury Park, part shade, about 15 feet tall. You can prune this literally any time of year. If you wanted to take this guy from 15 feet down to 3 feet, you would not want to do that all at once. That's like boot camp, going from, dreadlocks to, we don't want to do that. There's a variety of reasons why we don't do that, but we could do that slowly. But the point here is that it's really easy to maintain. It looks beautiful. Here's a picture of, I think this is leatherleaf on the right here. There's a bunch of different cultivars, but again, you could see the natural distribution of Frangula californica, Rhamnus californica. We can just call it California coffeeberry or coffeeberry, and it makes sense. We see in our landscapes, this is one of our most reliable plants. You could use it under your windows. If you don't have any teenagers trying to jump out of the window, I would recommend cactus and poison oak in that situation. But if you do, if you don't have any teenagers, then you could use coffeeberry, keep it 3 to 5 feet in full sun. Even takes reflected heat in Newbury Park. I would not put it in reflected heat. Reflected heat is when the afternoon sun just hits your stucco or your wall, and it's just 5 to 15 degrees hotter on that wall. I would not use it in that scenario in like Simi Valley, but Newbury Park, super, super easy. Another plant that I love, that officially, when I become mayor of a new town between Newbury Park and Camarillo, which I'm lobbying for that, I'm gonna make this the official tree. Every landscaper, Caltrans, all the new homes going in, we should all have Toyon in our gardens. It flowers June, July, sometimes in August. And so we're providing food for our pollinators. You can close your eyes in June or July and you can hear this plant. Maybe that's exaggerated, you can't hear this, but you can hear the pollinators. There's so much activity on this plant. And then it's beautiful for holiday decorations in November, December. You can actually eat the berries as well. You can prune it into a 6 foot tall column. You can let it get to about 20 to 25 feet tall. It works in part shade. It works in full blasting sun in 100 degrees. Super adaptable plant. Mexican elderberry, like Jen was saying, it's very, very adaptable. I've seen this plant personally on the, I forget what the road is going out to Ojai from the Ventura Avenue, all going up to Ojai. I've seen it in just this empty field out there. 2 Mexican elderberries, one next to a creek. It's a dry creek, but there's water there seasonally, and there's water. So in theory, the guy is getting watered all year, right? He's tapping into water. There's no irrigation system, but there's water in the ground. If you go about half a soccer field away from it, there's not as much water or any water, and that guy goes seriously dormant during June, July, August, September. But the other plant that has access to water, that's probably 25, maybe even deeper than that with the roots, looks beautiful all year round. And we can do that in our landscapes. There's no reason that our landscapes have to look brown like a Sanchez family reunion, even though that's beautiful. But a lot of people don't want that brownness that our hillsides have in August. And we don't have to do that if we don't want to by lightly irrigating some of our plants. Narrow leaf milkweed, like a few of the previous speakers were talking about, is just our go-to local plant for attracting monarch butterflies. We have two other local Conejo Valley, basically milkweeds. The other two are hard, and I don't know. I didn't organize myself to show you the distribution, but the distribution on those other two milkweeds is not as wide as this milkweed. This milkweed is everywhere, right? Basically, wherever there's a liquor store or a Circle K in California, that's where we find our leaf milkweed, and it's very easy to grow. And that's the one that we recommend for folks who want to do attracting monarch butterflies to their garden. Like Laura was saying, white sage. White sage, in our experience, can be a little hard for beginner and even intermediate gardeners to get established. And it makes sense. These plants have been growing 500, 1,000, maybe more years than that. When you do something for that long, that many years, I know I can do something for a week and it becomes a habit. These guys have been doing this for thousands of years. And what is their habit? Their habit is after April, they're used to no water until about October or November. That's a hard habit to break. Think about a habit that you might be wanting to break after COVID, which is like the 15 pounds that I gained from COVID. I'm trying to break that habit. So these guys are they're not trying to break a habit. It's a habit that they remember of having basically no water for 6 months. And we put them in a drip system. We put them in flat locations, which they do not occur in. If you guys know this plant in native nature, they're always on slight slopes. So if it rains, the rain washes right off. And we put them in our, flat clay soil drip system, and they die almost immediately. Within 18 to 24 months, it's very common to have white sage die. And look at this. This remembers Southern California into Baja. This is a very distinct rainfall pattern. But if we go to black sage, which to me is probably the easiest shrubby sage to grow, there's one that's easier, that's a hybrid, and I'll talk about it in a second. But black sage we can use under oak trees. We can use it in full sun close to riverside. This guy can take being next to a DMV or a hospital with a drip system. He can take being pruned like a haircut, like a soldier, like a jarhead. And this, I'm not saying that this CalFlora distribution map works all the time, but I've been doing this long enough to know that over 95% of the time, this is a very good indicator that these plants are adaptable. Basically, it's like a kid growing up. If that kid grew up in like Beverly Hills and he had a Thea who lived in like Newbury Park, and then he had like a cousin who lived in Oxnard and he had to bounce around, this guy is adaptable. He knows how to eat tacos. He knows how to eat French toast. He's got everything, right? When we see plants like this with a much more narrow distribution, that's when we need to usually pay more attention to where that plant comes from. Bladder pod, I want to give a shout out to one of my favorite plants in the world, top 3 native plants for me. UC Davis has it on a very beautiful list of 100 plants for California. It's not just native plants on their list, it's just low water plants. In my opinion, this plant should be used way more than it is. This is it next to creosote in the Mojave Desert. You can also find it in Malibu within maybe about 3 or 4 soccer fields of the ocean. So this plant occurs basically next to salt spray and then occurs next to creosote bush. That's a rough plant. I don't want to see this plant in an alley behind a liquor store. If you see this type of plant, you walk away. This is a tough guy. This guy knows a lot of neighborhoods. This guy flowers 6 months out of the year with no help. With help, which to me is a little pruning, a little compost, a little water, he can flower almost all year. This guy attracts hummingbirds. You can eat the pods, so it's related to capers, the caper plant from the Mediterranean. And so this is a slightly different distribution. A lot of the stuff we were looking at before was going north and south. This guy is going east and west. You can tell I know my directions really well. I had to think about which way is north. But this is interesting because maybe with climate change happening, maybe this is how our plants are going to start moving. Instead of north and south, for some of the desert plants, we might see this start to happen, right? And this guy's ready. This guy's ready for climate change. Like, he's asking for climate. No one's asking for climate change. Sorry. So I do a bunch of free classes online through Eventbrite. I'll give you guys how to find all those classes. And to me, it comes down to these 15 tips, which I go over. I'm not going to go over them today, but I do want to focus on one just to give you a clue, because you're going to go online and find a lot of stuff that says you cannot plant this in clay soil and you cannot plant this in any soil besides well draining. And to me, with all respect to everyone who's written that, I've been doing this for over 15 years and I've killed a lot of plants in those 15 years. This is one of the most important things that you can learn about, is that our plants usually do not need good drainage. They're fine in clay soil. The white sage almost never occurs in clay soil. It almost never needs good drainage. What it does need is for you not to water the clay soil. It's a big difference. And I compare it to black widows. Black widows are all in our garages, under cinder blocks, under wood in our backyard. And what are they doing? They're doing really good work, eating insects that we might not want. They're there for a purpose. And if you lift up a cinder block and you poke a black widow, he may not sting you. If you keep poking at him, actually, I don't think spiders sting, do they? I think they bite. I don't know anything about insects. You can tell that's why I know what I'm talking about with plants, because I have no idea how an insect bites or stings. But if you keep poking at that black widow, eventually he'll get you. But if you just leave the black widow alone, he'll do his job, which is what our clay soil is there for. Clay soil has amazing nutrients that are so much better than gravel soil if we're trying to make plants look good. And what you need to do is stop poking your black widow, your clay soil. Stop drip irrigating it every 2 days. Pull back and lift up the cinder block and poke it every 20 days instead, and you'll see amazing results. So I want to encourage you guys to check us out on Samo Fund. That's who I work for in the Santa Monica Mountains. You can go just type in Google Samo Fund Eventbrite. You can also just email me. We have classes on seed collecting, seed cleaning. We're doing a bunch of milkweed stuff. We have free plant Fridays. We're going to do one tomorrow from 9 to 2, where you can come volunteer with us, help us grow plants, and we'll give you 3 plants to take home, like black sage, white sage. You can go kill a white sage on your own if you like. Hopefully you don't. We have bladder pot to give away, a bunch of pensamins. I have a free online class talking about the Santa Monica Mountains plants, the 30 best local plants to grow in your garden. We have another milkweed conference. We had over 500 people at our last milkweed conference. We have another one in March. If you guys are interested in some horrible native music, there may or may not be a really good band called Native Sages Against the Machine that I may be involved with. And again, here is Samo Fund Eventbrite. And yeah, I have maintenance classes, and there's a bunch of other stuff. We have Brian and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm gonna be quiet now, Jerry. That was a quick 2 hours.
That was terrific. We have a beautiful photo of a bladder pod in the article on the Acorn today about this event. Those distribution maps were wonderful. I think that was really, really cool, Antonio. And I'm going to have to not be rushing in and out of my liquor store and do a little bit more lurking, I think, to appreciate the flowers.
Behind the liquor stores where you find the best plants.
And if there are reservations for this next Sanchez family reunion, put me on the list.
You're already on there, Jerry.
All right.
Sorry. Yeah, whether you want to or not.
If you could unshare this, then we'll turn to Brian. There we go. That was great. Thanks. Brian, take it away.
Well, thank you all very much. And thank you, Jerry. And want to appreciate the Conejo Open Space Foundation for putting on a special evening like this. And I'm glad that there's so many people here. I love seeing the list here. There's a lot of friends, old and new, and some of my favorite people are on the list of attendees tonight. So thank you all for being here. And I appreciate your being interested in native landscaping. And I hope most of you will kind of join our movement at some point and find the same kind of joy anyway that I found in cultivating my small little addition to nature. I'll give another plug to the bladder pod, as Antonio did. that was one of the first plants I got started with in my yard. And it was inspired by a hike in Wildwood Park. And along one of the trails, there's this giant boulder, and it's got this crusty old bladder pod. It looks like it's 100 years old or something. And it just seemed like, man, if that thing will grow here, yeah, I think I could get that to grow in my yard. that was interesting. But your native landscaping, while not always occurring in a natural environment, it still does provide benefits to our larger native landscapes that surround our communities and our open space. And I want to just touch briefly on a few ways that native gardeners are helping our local open space and our natural areas. And when you have a native landscape, you'll find that many birds will take advantage of the resources you're providing. You'll begin to notice over time which of these are year-round resident species, which are the seasonal visitors, and the growth in species diversity in your yard might be a very good clue that something special is happening in your landscape. So I recommend, maybe even start before you're converting your yard and take a look and see what birds are in your yard now, so you can track the change over time. That was one of the most fun ways that I've experienced my native yard. And it's also a way that when we're managing large scale open spaces and larger scale environmental and habitat restoration projects, we'll use bird monitoring as a what they call functional success metric. So when you start getting more birds, it means you actually created something special. So with native gardening, you can gotta get two hobbies in one, is what I think. And if you don't know about birds, it's actually pretty easy to get started. You could just start with the Merlin Bird ID app on your phone. It's a great place to start. I also wanted to mention another important part about our native gardening is that native landscapes are curated really without fertilizers and pesticides that are commonly used in our ornamental landscapes. I mean, all those products that are being used in the community have the potential to escape those private properties. And what happens is it rains and all that stuff follows the water. And ultimately, it will find itself into a stream. And in the Conejo Valley, if it finds itself in a stream, it will be on COSCA open space. So our native landscapes are a great way to support our local natural areas simply by reducing the pollution that gets created in the process of managing artificial environments. As I think other folks have mentioned earlier, is that we recommend purchasing your native plants from reputable local and regional nurseries specializing in local plant species. There's a few candidates right here on this webinar that you could talk to about purchasing these. And what that does, it does ensure that your stock wasn't harvested from natural areas. This is an issue that we've experienced on COSCA open spaces locally. Certain species have taken more of the brunt of it. Some of these plants are actually I guess poached is the best word to say. They're sold at roadside stands or flea markets, and there's even a market for some of these things overseas. It's pretty crazy. A particularly sensitive and threatened plant on our local open space are the Dudleas, including our chalk Dudlea. They're beautiful little plants, but you can get succulents. You can get succulents at an approved, reputable nursery. They don't need to be taken from open space. Fortunately, not too long ago, our California Native Plant Society sponsored Assembly Bill 223 to protect Dudleas, and the California State Legislature has recently approved that. So we now have another tool for helping to protect the Dudleas. So since we have 100 of you on the line, and more eyes help prevent plant poaching. If you do ever see anybody removing plants from our local open space, please contact COSCA and our rangers to report that, because any details might help us identify those people doing so, and we could put a stop to it. Again, and Jen and Antonio, great places and people to talk to about plants, and go visit your local native plant nursery. I might also mention that native plants can also be incorporated into defensible space areas around homes that are intended to reduce fire risks. And I know with our, we're even going to be seeing some enhanced fire weather here in the next few days, that it's important for people to have that 100 feet of defensible space around their homes. But within a defensible space zone, the fire department doesn't actually recommend removing all plants. They recommend a mosaic pattern, and incorporating native plants into that. They're really low maintenance, like the others have mentioned, and they do play an important role in in stabilizing soil and providing some habitat. A lot of our native shrubs, even with some modest irrigation, are pretty resistant to ignitions. So you could talk to a native plant nursery, and there's California Native Plant Society. If you search on their website, they've got a great plant list for, I guess, fire safe and appropriate native landscaping. When it comes down to protection of COSCA's, it's COSCA's, but it's also your local open space. Depends on a community of people that share a common environmental ethic and take steps to reduce pollution and provide some added resource for local wildlife. A lot's been shared tonight, and I'm glad many of you have signed up to get more information. Again, I appreciate the Open Space Foundation for putting this together. Conejo Open Space Foundation is a really important partner for COSCA. They help fund some of our programs, and as we're emerging out of the COVID times, we start firing up our volunteer programs again. They play a huge role in helping us coordinate volunteers and funding some of the projects that our volunteers will be doing. So I guess I will, maybe so Jerry doesn't have to say it himself, I hope that a lot of you will consider continuing to support the foundation, because they do really important work for all of us in our open space areas. So thanks again for having me. And if there's questions that pop up in the Q&A, I'm happy to weigh in. I would have loved to talk about my own garden more, but you've already heard a lot about gardens. So we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Brian. And hopefully, well, not hopefully, presumably, we're going to get out of this COVID nightmare and at some point, and we can have more trail work days where people can go out and help maintain trails in the open space that COSCA manages. And you guys do a great job. So we are, really love to support what COSCA does. And so thank you. Let's see, Ms. Kettlehut, you have been monitoring the chat and responding to some things. So thank you for that. Do you want to start us on the Q&A and see what questions have come through?
Yep. And I want to say thank you, because our panelists have already been answering things behind the scenes, which is great. So cut some of that down, because I know everybody wants to get to the end of the Dodger game. And we won't say anything about that. All right, Laura, how do we integrate drought tolerant areas with native plants? That's a big, big topic. You need to unmute yourself. You're muted.
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
So how do we integrate drought tolerant lawn areas with native plants?
That's a big topic.
That's a big topic, yeah.
Just the same way you would creating a border, or creating, taking out the lawn and designing a whole, like I did, different types of plants. You could go with drought, like Jen was saying, using the yarrow. Was it Jen or Antonio about using yarrow for a lawn? I've never done that as a lawn. I mean, there's other types of things that you can create that way, but I would say first get familiar with what plants you love, what kind of look you want for taking out your lawn. And maybe take one of Antonio's classes. He's got some great classes, and visit Jenn's nursery and sit down and discuss what you'd like to do. I think that's a big question.
Brian,
Hope
did
I
you
answered that?
Brian, did you address that
with that one?
Mhm.
This is one where there's a lot of really great books about natural habitats or ecosystems. And there's one by Alry Middlebrook and Glenn Cater, and they talk about remaking naturally occurring California ecosystems in your yard. So Alry Middlebrook is a garden designer and has a landscape company in the Bay Area. So she would do like a chaparral garden, which would be very appropriate here because we have a lot of chaparral. Or if you're going to do a meadow, there's meadow plants. So you grow yarrow with like 6 other species that all can be managed with the water, Laura, that you talked about similarly. And there's a technique for burning meadows, but you can also burn meadows. Don't burn your meadow, like, please, no burning. Or if you do, like, get your local fire person to help you. But that's a great resource. So that's Alry, Alrie Middlebrook, and Glenn Cater, which is Keator, I believe. So that's available on Amazon or the TO library, though I might have a copy sitting on my desk right now. And there's a lot of people who've already done the work, and I think there's no shame in harvesting the best from other smart people and then using it in your yard or environment.
Yeah, I agree.
So here's a question for Laura, but also I'm going to add a double question that I'd like anybody else to weigh in. So the first is how often do you, and how much do you actually water? And the second part of that question is, all right, so you just planted these plants. It's now fall. I know we weren't supposed to plant in the summer. This one's coming from me. So now we've just planted in the fall and we don't want to bury these in water. How much do you water for a brand new plant? I know there are certain ways to do that. So Laura, if you could answer that, and then if everybody else could weigh in a little bit on the watering piece.
Yeah, now I think I'll weigh in a little bit what I know as a homeowner. I'm not a professional in this, and then I'm going to throw it to Antonio because he actually he inspired me to not overwater, and I think he demonstrated it really well. First of all, it depends on what kind of soil you actually have. If you have a big mulchy kind of soil or sandy soil, you're going to water differently than you will the clay. That's what I have found. There are different ways. There's hand watering, there's drip line. But I would when you first plant, there's a protocol for that. And what I would do is I would water, basically dug a hole 3 times the size of the actual container and the same depth of the container. And then I would fill that with water 3 or 4 times, just saturate the soil as much as I possibly can. And then I'd plant the plant, water it in, and then leave it for a few weeks. And then I probably would water it once a week very deeply. And all of my plants took off with that protocol because I was able to activate the organisms in the soil by, getting it watered really deep. And then when I would water it once a week, it would just automatically absorb very nicely. So that's what I do with my new plants. Anybody want to, Antonio, you want to chime in, or Jen?
I'll weigh in on water. In my design, I have sort of different water need zones within the yard because I have sort of different little habitat areas. I try to make various little habitats within the yard. But honestly, during this summer when we didn't have the 100-degree days, I mean, there were times I'd go 6 weeks between watering, and some of these plants only really, maybe just sprinkle some water on to wash the dust off the leaves or something is really all they really want. But there are some that do take more water, and so you don't want to mix up your water needing plants with your water not needing plants. So that's something to think about. Like, Laura, when you were talking about, designing and you'd made the drawings and you're thinking seriously about what plant goes in what area. I didn't do it all right the first time, but I like to think of native gardening as a process, not a project. It's never really over, and it's okay to make some mistakes and learn.
And watering is very specific to each plant hydrozone that you put in. But again, once you get them established, then you got to kind of leave them alone during the summer. You got to be very careful with some of these plants. They're not made to be watered. We live in a Mediterranean climate, but that doesn't mean they don't get any water at all. They need very specific water, very deep watering.
Antonio also alluded to reflected heat. So if you have the north side, if you have a yard north of your house, and there's a street north of that, obviously the parking strip is still going to get really hot because it's surrounded by asphalt and concrete. So that will need more water than anything due north of your house, which is mostly shade. So you have the plants needs, and you have aspect, meaning which direction north, south, east, west things face. You have slope, and you also have like shade and stuff like that. So consider what the plants need, but also, you know, your yard and your property, and don't think, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. You know where the shadows lie, or you can, you know, sit on a Saturday and watch where shadows fall. You know, if the neighbor's RV is blocking out the sun, all of that does matter. And I don't want to like overwhelm you and kind of have you overthink yourself into a corner, but observe. And I think Brian's advice that it's a process, not a destination, is really great to keep in mind too. Most of the other horticulturists or gardeners that I know are kind of mad scientists with their yard as their laboratory. You are welcome to join us. It's a wonderful place to live. So if you can kind of put, like, give yourself grace if stuff dies, because I know that I've probably killed more plants than the average person, and I still live with me. I'm okay. So please, like, be kind to yourself. And I'm going to give another plug for Growing Works. We sell a lot of things in the 4-inch containers that I showed on the video. So that's a plant that costs $6 to $8 retail. That's 2 frappuccinos worth of plant. And if you're concerned about killing stuff, kill a 2 frappuccino plant. Don't kill a, you know, steak dinner plant. Like, start small and be willing, you know that some aren't going to make it. But if, you know, 5 frappuccino plants make it, that's a win. And they're going to be a steak dinner plant in like 6 months to a year. You're good. You can get started and start making a difference in your yard for $30.
Mm-hmm. And I really think if you start small, I mean, I always encourage everyone to start with a little area, a little border, and play with it and get familiar with your native plants after you've taken a few classes and found some really great resources. Because then you can't go wrong. If you pull out your entire front lawn and you start throwing things in, it's just a big old mess, which I've seen quite a few houses that have done that. You know, that can be a disaster. So it might be better if you're planning on doing it yourself. I had to do it myself to save money. I just did a couple little areas and just got familiar with it. And I made a lot of mistakes. I had to pull a lot of things out, and I'm replanting next week, or in a couple of weeks here, because I've killed my sages, and that was by accident. I didn't do that on purpose, but it happens. You know, but then I'm excited because now I'm going to get a couple new varieties in there that I didn't get in there the first time. So I'm really excited about replanting.
Can I throw in just a little, just in my experience, if you guys can think about breaking up the seasons, basically, if we're doing low water, native plants, Mediterranean plants like rosemary, proteas, whatever, the way I break it down is we have the dry season, and then the wet season. The wet season is when they want water or when they're used to water. And then the dry season is when they're not used to water historically. And if we talk about the local stuff like the oak woodland, the chaparral, and the coastal sage scrub, which is kind of the more popular plants that we use in our garden, you guys can remember that it's kind of hard to overwater plants in the winter. And it's really easy to overwater them during the dry season. And you know, I've done all the formulas. If you guys take some of the free maintenance classes that I have online, I'll take you through the formula that we use, but you don't need it, in my opinion. The formula is very simple in Southern California, in my experience. If you have a drip system during the dry season with an old plant, so that's an established plant with roots, we're basically visiting a white sage in nature. We're visiting an oak tree in nature. It's been there, it's established, it's good. The most we want to water it in most places in Southern California is twice a month during the dry season. May, June, July, August, September, October. So that's 6 months, 2 times a month. That's 12 times. So if we're watering more than that, we should think, well, this white sage in native nature doesn't get any water during this time. So why do we need to water more than this? And if you guys can kind of be in that mindset, so drip systems, we run for about 10 to 15 minutes for those every 2 weeks, basically. Overhead spray systems, we run for about 30 minutes to maybe 45 minutes. And the header watering is a little bit more complicated because of the size of your garden, and then how much pressure you have, how many gallons per minute you have. But usually for a typical front lawn, it's about 10 to 20 minutes of what you would water a lawn every 2 weeks. If you can stick with that, you're going to keep your plants hydrated, happy, and not overwater them. It's really hard to become an alcoholic if you only drink every 14 days. That's what we're doing. We're giving our plants a beer every 14 days. It's really easy to become an alcoholic if you put a drip system and you give your plants water every 2 days, right? And then I put in the chat real quick back to the lawn thing. The lawn, like Laura said, it's kind of a deep question, deep topic. I used to work at the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden. I would encourage you guys, if you have a chance, to go up there. They have 3 different native plant lawn replacements on display. The yarrow, they have a Budula gracilis, which is I forget what the common name is. And then they have the carex, one of the sedges. You can see them all, and it's a beautiful view. You have to pay, or you can sneak in. I won't tell anybody. And then S&S Seed in Carpinteria has a really good website. Unfortunately, they're usually only open to wholesale and people in the industry, but you can see they actually sell sod, so rolls of native sod lawn replacement. And that would be one thing, that you guys might want to check out.
Cool. All right, we're being asked if we would provide the websites and emails of all the presenters on the COSCA site. Yes, absolutely, as well as all of these places that everybody's been discussing. Santa Barbara Botanic Garden, we'll give you a list of resources. And keep in mind too, we have the Conejo Valley Botanic Garden right here, guys, which is right in the middle of town by Dover Hendricks Park. If you haven't poked on up there, you got to get there. You could go to Ventura, the Ventura Botanic Garden. I mean, they're all over the place. And what a great thing. Christmas is coming up, and apparently with the supply chain, we're not going to be able to get Christmas presents. So why not give a gift of a botanic garden, or make a gift to, like, Santa Monica Mountains Fund, people like that. Those are the kinds of things, or to COSCA. I mean, these are all the kinds of things you could be thinking about doing that are alternatives. Okay, so Brian, this may be one of our last questions because we're wrapping up. Brian, are there any COSCA programs that guide people in identifying native plants on our trails?
Offering interpretive type experiences on the open space for COSCA is, that's kind of a goal for us that's kind of out there. We have about 12,700 acres of property we're managing now. With an outdoor ranger corps of about 6 people, and we staff 7 days a week, so the human resources aren't really there to do that. We were fortunate that our parent agencies did grant us more budget this year, so we were able to expand our ranger program. So within about 6 months we'll have 4 more rangers, so we hope to start building those resources. It's more likely in the short term that we would turn to partner agencies to provide interpretive experiences, people that have those types of skills already that could do that. We're definitely open to that. I think it's part of in the enrichment of the experience out in the open space. And we hope that someday our organization will evolve to where we can provide that more seamlessly.
All right, well, there are a few other little things in there, but I think that probably wraps it up, Jerry. And a lot of great chat. Make sure that you guys take a look at the question and answer. They're asking, how do I contact them? We'll be putting that on the COSF website. we'll put that when we're done here. We'll probably by tomorrow, we'll have all that up on the COSCA website.
Right. Thank you all. I hope this was as informative for you as it was for me. There's so much information, and the video recording that we'll be posting might be something that some of our attendees could refer to, because you could scroll through and find a specific spot where you wanted to get some more information. So that will be up hopefully by Sunday night or early in the week. I want to thank each of you. You guys did great, such wonderful information and such a variety of information. This was very worthwhile. Any final words from the panelists?
No, just thank you so much for having me come and talk. I really love what you guys do. I love the trails, and any way I can help out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. I really enjoyed the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate everybody that tuned in today, because I think this is a really exciting opportunity.
Exactly. Antonio, were you?
Thanks, Marcella, for organizing this. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jerry.
We're getting some nice comments through the chat now about how people appreciated this. So thanks again. And again, we'll have, for those who made donations, we'll be sending out an email with the information on how to collect the plants that you're eligible to get from Growing Works, or how to go to Laura's website for a discount code for some of her classes. And then Antonio's classes are free, so you can please check those out as well. All right. Well, everyone, thank you again. We're going to call this a night, and hope to see you all soon.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank you.